The Galactic Council had classified humans as Category 7 harmless herbivores. Ambassador Zixel of the Vidian Empire found this classification laughably appropriate as he watched the two human younglings chase each other around the diplomatic garden on Station Nexus 9. The smaller one, a female called Lily, couldn't have been more than 6 cycles old by human standards. Her companion, Jackson, appeared slightly older at perhaps 8 cycles. Both were diminutive creatures with soft pale skin and bright eyes that sparkled with what Zixel's cultural briefings had described as innocent curiosity. Quite adorable, aren't they? Dr. Sarah Chun, the human ambassador, smiled as she joined Zixel at the observation deck. Jackson is my nephew, and Lily is the daughter of our chief engineer. They're excited to see an alien space station. Zixel nodded politely, his forearms folded in the traditional Vidian gesture of agreement. Offspring appear remarkably docile. The council's assessment seems accurate. Dr. Chun raised an eyebrow but said nothing, turning her attention back to the children who were now examining the exotic plants in the biodome section of the garden. The garden served as a neutral meeting space featuring flora from dozens of worlds. Most species kept their young far from such diplomatic venues, as many of the plants were either toxic or dangerous. But humans, it seemed, had no such concerns about their fragile offspring. Look, Jackson. Lily's voice echoed through the dome as she pointed at a writhing mass of crimson tendrils near the ultra-ion section. It's moving. Jackson approached the display case cautiously. Inside, a Shadow Maw from the Deathworld of Carrick's Prime coiled and uncoiled its muscular body. The creature was larger than an adult's torso, with razor-sharp appendages and neurotoxic fangs that could kill most sapient species within minutes. That's a Shadow Maw, called Dr. Chun calmly. Remember what we discussed about looking but not touching, kids? Zixel felt a flutter of approval. At least the human adult showed some sense of danger. His approval turned to horror when the display case's energy barrier flickered and died. A maintenance error, perhaps, or a power fluctuation. The Shadow Maw immediately sensed freedom, its photosensitive organs detecting the change. It began probing the edge of its enclosure with deadly intent. Alert! Alert! Zixel's translator barked as he reached for his emergency communicator. Containment breach in Section 7. Class A Predator loose. The Shadow Maw poured from its enclosure like liquid death, its muscular coils rippling as it oriented toward the nearest heat signatures, the two human children. Jackson saw the creature first. Instead of the paralytic terror that would grip most species young, the boy's eyes widened with something that made Zixel's blood run cold. Excitement. Lily, look. It's like a really big snake. The Shadow Maw reared up, its body forming an S-curve of pure menace. Its fangs extended, dripping with venom that hissed as it hit the ground. Any rational being would flee. Any civilized species would at least show fear. Lily giggled. She actually giggled as 3 meters of apex predator swayed hypnotically before her. It's dancing. She clapped her small hands together. Can we pet it? Station security is en route. Zixel spoke rapidly into his communicator, never taking his eyes off the impending massacre. Estimated arrival, 47 seconds. Too long. Far too long. The Shadow Maw struck with lightning speed, its body uncoiling like a release spring. Zixel closed his eyes, unable to watch the inevitable carnage. He opened them to the sound of more giggling. Jackson had somehow caught the creature mid-strike. His small hands wrapped around its body, just behind the head. The Shadow Maw writhed furiously, its tail whipping through the air with enough force to shatter bone. Wow, it's really strong. Jackson laughed, adjusting his grip. Feel this, Lily. Lily reached out and petted the creature's flank while it continued its desperate attempts to escape. Oh, it's so smooth. Like that snake we saw at the zoo, but bigger. Zixel's mind reeled. The boy was restraining a creature that could overpower a full-grown Vidian warrior. The girl was treating it like a domestic animal. Neither showed the slightest sign of distress. Jackson, what did I tell you about picking up animals without asking first? Dr. Chun's voice carried a note of mild exasperation rather than terror. Sorry, Aunt Sarah, but it looked like it wanted to play. It's probably scared, honey. Let's put it back in its home before someone gets hurt. Jackson carried the still writhing Shadow Maw back toward its enclosure as casually as he might transport a house pet. Lily skipped alongside him, occasionally reaching out to stroke the creature's coils. There you go, Jackson said gently, lowering the predator back into its habitat. Sorry we couldn't play longer. The Shadow Maw, perhaps too shocked by its experience to process what had happened, simply coiled in the corner of its enclosure and stared. Station security arrived moments later, weapons drawn and ready for combat. They found two human children examining a different display, completely unaware they had just manhandled one of the galaxy's most feared predators. Zixel's legs gave out. He slumped against the observation railing, his forearms trembling as the implications crashed over him like a tidal wave. The humans weren't herbivores. They weren't harmless. They were something far more terrifying than any predator he'd ever encountered. They were a species so apex, so utterly dominant on their world, that their children treated galactic-class predators as playthings. What kind of nightmare Deathworld had produced beings who could grab a Shadow Maw barehanded and laugh? Dr. Chun approached his position, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry about that, Ambassador. Children, you know, they haven't learned proper fear responses yet. Fear responses. Zixel's translator struggled with the concept. What could possibly teach fear to creatures like these? You're your world, he managed to whisper. What is it like? Dr. Chun smiled that innocent human smile. Oh, Earth? It's lovely. The children have been asking if they can see the petting zoo section next. I hope you don't mind if they interact with some of your gentler species. Zixel looked down at the two small humans, now discussing whether the tentacled horror from Proxima 7 might enjoy being tickled. Gentler species. The human had called his people a gentler species. As Jackson and Lily skipped toward the next exhibit, debating whether the next creature they encountered might enjoy belly rubs, Zixel began composing an urgent message to the Galactic Council. The human classification needed immediate revision.